Hello, all you lovely listeners. This is your host, Shreya Salian, the founder of Sync, with the new guest that is here to share about their symptoms, conditions, and experiences. I would like to welcome you, our special guest, Arnav here. Here, please take the stage and let us know what condition do you have? What is the symptoms? Can you describe more about what it is?
Hi guys. My name is Arunab Awasthi. I am a type 1 diabetic. I've been suffering from type 1 diabetes since I was 10 years old. So it's been 14 years of experience with type 1 diabetes now.
What is type 1
Okay, what is type 1
diabetes?
diabetes is it's pretty simple, right? You have an organ which controls blood sugar, but blood sugar percentage, and it goes havoc. So now basically whatever you eat, right, the sugar which it has, the carbohydrates, it all accumulates into blood, and now you have to take external medicine to kind of balance it out. So let's say I take 100 grams of sugar, out of which 10 grams is absorbed in my body. So my blood sugar concentration rises from, let's say, 100 to 250. Where does it go, right? So now body needs insulin to actually make it convert that sugar into ATP, which is the of energy output that we do, right? So this conversion is dependent upon insulin hormone, and insulin hormone, let's say the immune system, right, attacks the cells which produce insulin. So now our insulin is not being produced. So we need to take external insulin from sources such as injections. This is injection based diabetes is called type 1 diabetes mellitus, right? It is an autoimmune disease. There's a type 2 diabetes also, of from which like patients take pills which make pancreas squeeze out more insulin. But in type 1 diabetes there's no cells which produces insulin because the immune system has destroyed it, thinking it is a foreign body, right? So the immune system destroys it. Now you have to take insulin. If you eat insulin, your gastric acids will make it into amino acids, right? So you cannot eat insulin. Now you have to take the injections in the form of insulin, which that artificial insulin will convert this extra blood sugar into ATP, and then etc etc, right? Then normal process follows. So that is type 1 diabetes essentially. In a crash course it would go something like that. Symptoms, I think, for me, what the first symptoms happened was frequent urination, because my body didn't have enough insulin, so it was trying to eliminate glucose through urination, sweating, all of these extra channels, whichever it had, right? So urination was very frequent. I think there was loss of appetite because body always thought ki it has enough energy to keep on going because of high blood sugar concentrations. So you become very thin because whatever you're eating is not being converted into fat or ATP or glycogen or any other channels. So it keeps on accumulating in your blood. So you get thin, but you eat more and more. So this kind of thing happens where you're getting thinner, eating more, frequent urination. I mean, I would say your cognition is a little bit hampered, or a lot of it is hampered, depend on your genes. And I think these are the primary symptoms, right? Others are the long-term symptoms. Eventually, you go into the coma. That is very apparent symptom that you have. Cannot miss it, and
Can't definitely miss
you can't definitely miss that, right? And
Has that happened?
with my
No, like with people?
yeah, very frequently. So one of the most frequent ways people find out is when they go into high blood sugar coma after some time, right? Because the C symptoms are so, let's say, incrementally increasing, you cannot gauge it. As in, let's say there's not a certain step after which it becomes very apparent. I mean, it is the certain step is the coma thing, right? So many people, they just do not, let's say, take notice of it, and eventually they fall into a coma. They'll eat, let's say, a lot of cake and glucose at some event and go into coma, and then they find out, okay, it's a diabetic hyperglycemic coma. Hyperglycemic meaning hyper is high, glycemia is blood sugar in,
Sugar, yeah.
and emia is presence in blood. So basically high blood sugar in blood, right? That's how they find out. Then there is a course of action to mitigate it. You take injections. There's no pill based solution, so I take 4 injections in a day.
Okay, and what's the duration, the gaps?
It's not about that. So if one for breakfast, one for lunch, one for dinner, and one is a long term insulin which remains in my blood for 48 hours. So excuse me, I take it once a day, usually at night, 11 p.m. or something, and then I go about my day, right? my dosage is dependent on what I'm eating and how much I'm eating of. What's the glycemic index of the same thing?
Okay.
And I try to maintain a low glycemic intake, balanced diet, right?
By
Slow.
how?
So I generally prefer food with let's say lower glycemic index, which does not have simple carbohydrates. So
Okay.
simple carbohydrates can increase your blood sugar with a very fast margin, right? And let's say sugar is a very simple carbohydrate. It can just make your blood sugar go in a straight upward line like this. While having something like a whole wheat thing will make your blood sugar go like this, right? Lower kind of slope. So that is beneficial for people who are diabetic because they're. So what happens is insulin has a concentration in blood, right? It depends on the insulin, but the fast acting insulin goes like this, and it would come like kind of like this, right? So it's a 2-hour period where it goes like this and comes down. If your carbohydrate intake can match that curve of insulin, then you're perfect, right? Ideally your blood sugar will go like this. It would slightly increase, and that's very normal. But if you have a very like diet composed of mainly simple carbohydrates like starch, sabudana khichdi, let's say you have, so your blood sugar will keep on going like this only,
Okay.
and it wouldn't fall like this. Also, it would just kind of take a plateau at some point in 2 hours and then slowly go down,
Okay.
which your rapid acting insulin won't be able to manage, right? So with some food, right, you just cannot take it in huge quantity. Mostly you can, with type 1 diabetes, I feel you can eat whatever you want in a limited quantity, but not too much of it.
Okay.
So yeah, so there is a little bit more freedom in terms of type 1 diabetes as opposed to conventional thinking where people compare it to type 2 and think, okay, maybe it's more severe than type 2, but type 1 has a little bit more freedom because type 2 diabetics, okay, they take a pill every day, same amount of pill. So they cannot change their diet by that much. But if I take, let's say, a very sweet thing right now, I can take insulin as much as I require it. So I have a little bit more freedom in that regards. I can have whatever, up till a certain sensible point, right? But that can also destroy me. So there's another side of type 1 diabetes, which is the low blood sugar, where if you take more insulin than what is required, then you quickly go dizzy. You can lose consciousness, which I have had in college recently. I was taking a test, didn't focus enough on blood sugar, right? I just was focused, let me just finish my test, then I'll go and to the canteen and have ice cream or whatnot. So I just kept on writing test, and when I started going to the canteen, right, I was in the second floor, I climbed down to the first floor, went down on my knees and fainted.
Wow.
So yeah, these kinds of episodes, not common, right? The first time it happened, but made me aware, okay, how much severe the other side of the diabetes is, which is hypoglycemia. Hypo is low blood sugar. So you are managing two things at once, right? And the goal is to maintain an equilibrium.
Like keep it balanced.
Keep it balanced for as long as you are alive.
Yeah.
So that is the thing. But we have type 1 diabetics have a bit more freedom.
Is there any diet like you follow or something you avoid?
Not really. I avoid simple carbohydrates, right? But there's nothing I follow as such. I eat nutritious food. I eat lots of protein. Not compulsorily because of diabetes, right? It's a way of life. If let's say you have diabetes, you don't have to follow a diabetic diet. In my opinion, you have to follow a healthy diet, which everyone should do. In a sense, but let's say a balanced, low GI, which everyone should do, right? That kind of diet, if you take with a regular interval, it's all fine. So essentially, be normal, right? Be healthy and normal, and that's the way to go. There's no special diet of diabetics. Companies will sell it to you.
Yeah.
There's a diabetic pack for so and so things, like cookies, diabetic atta is there. But for me, right, I feel most of it is like marketing.
Yeah.
To kind of separate out a segment of population and sell it to them. Just because I'm diabetic, I should buy this because it has diabetes written on it. It's something I feel is a little bit of scam going on here and there. If people benefit from it, it's great for them, right? You should do it if it benefits for you. But for me, I feel like if I just take healthy diet, right, and do not take sugar, which is a healthy thing, I don't think people should be taking tea with sugar. You have better choices, right? You have stevia, you have different kind of gourd is there, honey is there, which is having a slightly lower GI, and it gives you the same kind of sweetness. So if you follow normal people healthy diet, right, with lots of protein, that is the diet actually you should be following.
Also, you were explaining something just earlier, like the data inside the body, like the functionality. Could you just give us a little bit more insight on that?
Functionality. Okay, so that is a very in-depth view of what diabetes is, right?
Yeah. I think that would be great to know about.
Okay. So this is a movie, right? Let me tell you what this movie, what happens is,
Okay.
so you have your immune system. The immune system looks out for foreign bodies and it tries to eliminate it. Whenever it finds a foreign body or something which it does not recognize, it kind of circles around it, envelopes it, consumes it, convert it into some kind of very basic elements in like an amino acids, and then it goes to your muscle and it gets eliminated pretty quickly, right? That's how cancer, if you know, cancerous cells daily occurs in your body, and your immune system takes care of it.
Yes.
The problem happens when immune systems sometimes think that the healthy cells are the body from outside.
Exactly.
Right. And that is what the basic of autoimmune diseases is. You have an immune system which is retarded.
Yeah.
So now this retarded immune system, right, will attack your healthy cells, as in for me, pancreatic cells, and kill them. So there is this phase, right, where my beta cells are generated, then eventually they're killed, and then the cycle continues. So now this immune system is also involved in this continuous cycle of killing beta cells.
So there is the disadvantage key. Now immune system is always every time focused on pancreas only, right? Beta cells just keep on generating and it keep on killing. So you have a weakened immune system, a little bit weaker, but a weaker than normal person immune system. Now beta cells are being killed, so insulin is not being developed. So whatever sugar you eat, right? You eat some sugar, it gets accumulated in your body. How do you eliminate it? How do you convert it into fat? How do you use it to convert it into ATP for muscles to use, right? Now liver also has glycogen. How do you convert that sugar into glycogen? So these are all solved by the hormone insulin. And if you do not have adequate insulin, it eventually, the sugar in your body keeps on accumulating. The concentration in your blood of sugar keeps on accumulating while body does not find the normal sources of ATP, right? It does not find fat. So what it does, it starts first of all converting fat into energy. After that is done, your muscle catabolism happens. This muscle gets converted into energy. So people start going very, 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 very thin, right? Muscle, when muscle is break down into this happens, energy happens, right? A byproduct is ketones. And what happens is when your muscle is breaking down to form energy, the blood becomes acidic. So blood becomes acidic because there's a lot of sugar in blood. It becomes acidic, and then when muscle is broken down, it releases ketones. So the condition in your blood is ketoacidosis is the disease, what it is called. So when blood is acidic and there's ketones in blood, it puts a lot of pressure on your organs. So it's a very fatal condition in many senses, right? So ketoacidosis occurs, and when that occurs, it's very essential that you do hospitalization immediately because it's a very, very toxic condition which occurs. And I think the main aim of a diabetic person, right, is to avoid ketoacidosis as well as severe episodes of hypoglycemia. The rest of it is a normal life, and somehow you can deal with it, but you should never approach that stage where you're developing ketoacidosis or severe hypoglycemia. So blood gets acidic, lots of pressure is put on organs, right? And let's say you introduce insulin to the picture then. So if you eat insulin, it's broken down quickly by the gastric acids in your body. So the only way to inject this is through subcutaneous methods. So you introduce it in through insulin, right? Injections, and it goes to your body. Slowly the insulin is diffused to your body, and it converts or instructs the cell in your blood or muscles to take in that sugar and convert it into normal energy, ATPs, and everything else. So this is how, superficially how that cycle goes. It's a very complicated thing.
But it's beautifully explained by you,
Okay,
the difference and
So I have done a lot of research, right?
Yeah.
So I've kind of become an expert in reading research because I've been reading it since I was 12, 13 years old, right? So I wouldn't say expert, but like I've been
knowledge.
doing it from a long time.
Yeah.
So I know some tidbits here and there, right? What happens in, like, let's say medical terms. Yeah.
And in also very simple terms, I think you explained it very clearly, the difference.
Yeah. This is also, I'm very experienced in explaining, right, what happens.
Yeah. Also, I have one more question to ask you. Like, does this have any association with hormone displacement or any disruption with the hormone when it comes, because it has sugar involvement? And does it have any of that disturbance as well? Or
yeah, of course.
And
Right.
how?
It's an endocrine disease, essentially. And endocrine disease is such that one hormone can impact the, generation of all other hormones that you have. Luckily for me, it hasn't been like this. I have my hormones and like everything regularly tested. But
and how long do you get it tested? Like when and how long?
so when it depends on how much my mom is shouting on me, right? So if my mom is like daily telling me to get it done, so it happens, I think, almost every 6 months she'll wake me up from this dream, right? And so if, let's say, she tells me every 6 months, so I take 1 month to start working out and to get my blood sugar reports good, right? And the 7th month I test it out. So every 7 months you can say I get it tested out, not by choice.
Yeah.
Right.
And what are all the testings you get done? If you can give a picture on that.
Okay, so CBC is a must, right? You should always monitor your ESRs. ESRs is inflammation marker, and it can also tell you about infections, what is happening in your body. So that cholesterol is fine thing. It's been a little up and down in other people. For me, it's been perfect, more than perfect. I have very good HDL levels, very low LDL levels. Probably it's genetic. I don't know. I never put emphasis on it in my diet or anything, but it has been like that. I take fish oil. Maybe it is one thing which has been impacting high HDL thing. But you should not have C-reactive protein. That's another marker, high, if you have high HDL. Otherwise, it can cause heart dysfunction. But anyways, other topic is thyroid. I get tested. That is quite essential, right? People with diabetes also develop thyroid conditions at some point, hypothyroidism mostly. So thyroid is something I get tested frequently. Kidney is also very essential for me, right? Kidney damage happens because so glucose, high blood sugar, right? What it essentially does is it puts an oxidative stress on the body. So what quickly, first of all, gets damaged is the nerves, the eye retina, the nephrons in your kidney, right? So these things are particularly sensitive, and I take care to monitor them. So heart and all cholesterol is second thing for me, right? I take care of kidney. I take care. My liver is properly tested with all the SGPOTs and all of those ratios, bilirubin, everything else, and yeah, that's it, right? Liver, kidney, thyroid, CBC, and is there anything else? Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, that's it.
I think that's a good checklist you have.
Yeah.
There's also another question, like since you have had it like when you were a kid to your teenage and then like your adulthood, can you give us like a little insight? How was it like as a kid, how your reaction was, and then how it affected you? If you're comfortable with it, if you're okay with it, and what are like the physical and mental aspects? If you could just give us a glimpse. Only if you're comfortable with what parts you're sharing. That's fine.
Yeah, sure. So as a kid, right, I started off as a psychopath. I didn't care much about it, not about others. Sorry, not a psychopath. As in for me, right, I didn't like focus on myself as in what is happening with me. But I did have a sense of entitlement, which is wrong, but I did have it. If I'm suffering so much, I should deserve something. And at that time, I ate anything at random. I even didn't take insulin and all, and my blood sugar was quite bad. And let's say I have skipped insulin for days on ends and taken cold coffees and everything very sugary, right? I would hide from my parents and eat sugar items. I mean, it might be a rebellious stage. It might be me, right? I had been a rebellious guy, right? I pitied my parents because of my rebellious nature, but I had been like that. And growing up, I think it's fine, right? I made mistakes, learned about it. I'm suffering from, let's say, consequences of those decisions as well because. So my brother is taller than me, right? I found I have grown not that much at what, let's say, I was expecting, or what my family members were, right? So there was definitely a part impacted on my growth as well, physically. Mentally as well, I have had consequences, right? I was not consistent.
Okay.
I was like a selectively time genius. I would have my genius moments, but rest of the time, right, which was like 80%, I would be dumb. So there was an identity crisis as well. What am I, right? Who am I, and what kind of intelligence I have?
When did that occur?
That occurred after 10th, I think, when I took dummy schooling, and everyone was expecting I'll go into some great college and everything else, and I just didn't have energy. So I mean, later I found out during the night my blood sugar would go low, right? And it was such that I wouldn't wake up. So the whole night it was low. So one consequence of low blood sugar is, so low blood sugar means you don't have any energy in your blood sugar, right? So your blood sugar is quite low. You cannot make energy. So first symptoms is your brain, which utilizes 25% of your energy in your idle state, right? It starts losing its balance of energy, and very quickly the neurons start dying up. So when I wake up, I would have a heavy headache because of the mental trauma, right? This is not emotional trauma. This is actual physical brain cell death which has happened. So this happened for, let's say, 1.5 years, right? And at that time I couldn't just study for whatever reason. I just thought maybe I'm lazy and all. It could be I was lazy and all also, but essentially it played a part in my ridiculous fails in exams and tests and all. So that time I had this identity crisis. Maybe I'm not smart, maybe I'm not this or that. Maybe it's blood sugar. Open to all, but yeah, it definitely played a part in this misinterpretation of myself. Where do I stand, right, in the whole competition, in the whole spectrum of intelligence? Because I found that earlier, engineering is not just about passion, or it is something you need to have a raw talent also to make it to the upper echelons of engineering fields. So this thing is what confused me, right? I had plans of MIT, I had plans of Stanford, whatever.
And I was ambition.
Not high ambition, in 9th standard, 10th standard, and I was my trajectory was going towards a third tier college. So it became a very confusing state for me. Where do I stand, right? Who am I? And I mean, it played a part with mental discomfort in that time also. And essentially, whoever has this autoimmune diseases, especially it's fatally, it impacts you. You're all alone. In fact, right, in regards of your emotional well-being and you monitoring yourself, you're all alone.
Yeah.
There's no guy, girl, parents who's going to take ownership and handhold you through every emotion there.
True that. And you just felt alone, like you're either going through a crazy phase alone, no one's understanding you. Have you had those as well?
Yeah, that also I've had, right? But I wasn't self-aware if I'm alone or what, but there was those emotions, right, which I saw. But you know what, luckily my mom had introduced me to a lot of yoga early on only, especially the meditative techniques, right? So I had read a lot of, I wouldn't say Osho I was following, but I have read some concepts of him, right? I have read some concepts of Swami Vivekananda and all. So I had tactics to deal with those emotions, right? Like,
Can you explain us some of the tactics?
Tactics were not that tricky actually. Like, it was just meditation, right? It was focusing on reasoning of my discomfort, let's say. I used to run, and that gave me a pathway into a meditative state. So running helped me a lot. I was running, let's say, whenever I felt really bad or upset or something, I used to run and think about it during the last stages of my run, right? Where you're like, your energy is quite low and you can just focus on your breathing. And that's when something I used to transition into sort of medical or some phases. And when that breath returned to you, right, you're huffing and puffing and you stop, and that breath returns to you, you get that moment. This is it. That's the solution. It was only a 14-year-old, right? There's no tactic or anything. There's no grandmaster move there. Good angle.